I think I switched dimensions.
It all started a few years ago, when I was in my early 20s. I was working a dead-end job, living in a tiny apartment, and feeling completely lost and unfulfilled. One night, as I was driving home from work, I had a strange experience that would change the course of my life forever. I was stopped at a red light, waiting for it to turn green, when suddenly everything around me seemed to shift and distort. The colors of the world became more vibrant, the sounds more intense, and I felt a strange tingling sensation throughout my body. It was as if the very fabric of reality had been altered. The light turned green, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I sat there, frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. That's when I noticed that the car in front of me was different. It was a newer model, a different color, and the driver was someone I didn't recognize. I blinked, and the car was back to normal. Shaken, I continued driving, but the feeling of unease never left me. I couldn't shake the sense that something had fundamentally changed, even if I couldn't put my finger on what. Over the next few days, I started to notice more and more subtle differences in my surroundings. The layout of my apartment was slightly different, the books on my shelf were in a different order, and even the way my coworkers interacted with me seemed off. I began to wonder if I had somehow slipped into a parallel universe, a different version of the reality I had known. As I grappled with this realization, I started to experience more and more instances of quantum leaps, where the world around me would shift and distort, only to snap back to normal a few moments later. It was as if I was jumping between different timelines, different versions of myself, with each one slightly different from the last. At first, I was terrified and confused, but as time went on, I started to embrace the experience. I began to see it as an opportunity to explore the multiverse, to experience different versions of my life and see how small changes could lead to vastly different outcomes. I started to experiment, making small changes in my daily life and observing the effects. I would take a different route to work, order a different meal for lunch, or make a seemingly insignificant decision, and then watch as the world around me shifted and changed in response. Through these experiments, I began to uncover the underlying principles of quantum mechanics that govern these parallel realities. I learned that every decision we make, every action we take, creates a new timeline, a new version of ourselves that branches off from the original. And by consciously choosing to make different decisions, I was able to jump between these timelines, experiencing a multitude of possible lives. It's been years since I first experienced that initial quantum leap, and I've since become an expert in navigating the multiverse. I've explored countless parallel worlds, each one unique and fascinating in its own way. I've met different versions of myself, some more successful and fulfilled than the one I left behind, and others who have faced even greater challenges and hardships. But through it all, I've come to appreciate the incredible complexity and beauty of the universe we live in. I've learned that there is no single, fixed reality, but rather an infinite number of possible realities, each one just as valid and real as the next. And by embracing the quantum nature of our existence, I've been able to transcend the limitations of my own life and experience the full breadth of human potential.
He never came back home.
I've just had a weird experience. My husband said he was going out to get some more wood. He's building some decking. I gave him a box to post and he left. About 10 minutes later, I was watering the plants in the garden when I looked up and saw him outside in the car, reversing as if to leave the street again. I thought it was odd that he had come back. I went inside expecting him to come in and say he had forgotten something, but 2 minutes later, no husband. So I checked online to see where he was, and he was 15 minutes away on the way to the DIY store as planned. I texted him, and he confirmed he didn't come back, but I 100% saw him.
I teleported from the 5th floor to the 7th.
This happened to me back in 2019 when I have barely heard of Glitch in the Matrix stories. I've been wanting to share it here, since sharing it with my friends and family only earned me some looks. I used to think this was some kind of paranormal, but seeing stories about glitches in the Matrix made me realize that this actually fit the description. Somehow. Anyways, I was working in a BPO company here in the southern Philippines. The company that I was working at had 7 floors and then a rooftop. I was a trainee at that time, so I planned to head towards my locker, which was at the 5th floor. Before proceeding to our training room, which was at the 6th floor. My roommate and I went into the elevator, and I remember how it was just the both of us. I remember being the one to press the 5th floor button. We got to the 5th floor, and I recall being slightly bothered by how quiet it was. We saw no one else around, not even the security guard that every floor has. But we ignored it, put our bags in our lockers, and headed back towards the elevator so we can go to the 6th floor. We waited for a few minutes before I started getting anxious because I knew we were about to be late. So then I turned towards the door to the stairs and invited my roommate to just take the stairs. After all, it was just a couple of steps up. She was very hesitant at first because she didn't like the stairs very much. No one frequented it, so it was creepy and dusty. But I told her we didn't have a choice because for some reason, the elevator wasn't stopping at the 5th floor at all. So I opened the door towards the stairs. I led the way even though it took a while for my roommate to follow me. When I got to the top of the stairs, the first and the only door that greeted me was the door towards the rooftop, which didn't make any sense, so I started laughing. Convinced, I think, that I was being punked or what. I probably thought it was a prank. When my roommate caught up to me, she started laughing with me as well because it was bizarre. But the longer we stood with it, the more I realized that there was no way this was a prank. It was no joke, we really were in front of the rooftop door. I looked down at the door we came out of, and my roommate had left it open. So I walked back down to prove a point to nobody in particular and went back inside. I promise you, when I went back in, I was baffled and astounded to see the 7th floor sign beside the security guard that guarded the elevator. Employees were rushing out of the elevator and we were frozen there. It was impossible. Until now, it's hard to believe that this happened to me, but it wasn't just me who experienced this. It was both my roommate and I. It couldn't have been a hallucination. Even now, years after this happened, this experience still haunts me, and reading other people's stories about glitches makes me wonder what happened that day. Why the glitch?
The life-saving glitch.
Glad I found this subreddit because man, do I have some glitch stories. I was driving back from Colorado to Texas with my wife in the seat next to me and my youngest son asleep in the back. It is very late and I was very tired. I zoned out in thought and was not paying attention to the road ahead of me. Suddenly I snapped back into full awareness and saw that my lane, the left-hand lane of the highway, was coming to an end, and there, not too far in front of us, there were several pylons blocking off my lane. I only had a few seconds to move to the right, and I shot a glance to the right to see if it was clear. It wasn't. There was an 18-wheeler semi to the right of me, its cab about parallel with the rear seat and trunk of my car. I think it was the sound of it that snapped me out of my daze. I was doing about 65 miles per hour, and my options were to slam the brakes and plow directly into the pylons, and whatever was beyond them couldn't see, or pray there was room to move to the right and maybe the truck driver would see my predicament and hit his brakes or move over as quickly as he could. I let my foot off the gas and edged quickly to the right so I could miss the pylons ahead and hopefully not lose control of the car. It still swerved a bit, but we made it. I turned my head to the right and there was no semi to be found anywhere. Nobody was near us. I looked over at my wife and she was white as a sheet. I asked her if she saw the semi and she nodded and said it had been right there beside us when I turned into that lane. She turned around and looked everywhere behind us. No semi anywhere. Norek. Some people farther back were continuing down the highway like normal. People on the other side were just continuing as normal. It's like it just winked out of existence.